Hey guys, it's Mike Monty, one half of Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast. And we want to reach out to all the fans out there who have supported our show to say thank you. Thank you for making 2021 one of our best years. And one of our best years was because of Anchor. Anchor, the way that you can have your voice heard. You can be just like us. Record your own podcast. Use the Anchor tools to edit your podcast. Use it on a phone. Use it on your computer. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all with Anchor, they're totally free. So be just like Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monty and the Pharaoh. We're looking together for a great 2022. We've got huge guests coming on board. Oh, yeah. You probably wonder why Jimmy's not here right now. Well, he's prepping for one of the best interviews we're about to have, and we're going to surprise someone with. So hang aboard with us, and don't forget, be like us and use Anchor.
Good evening and welcome to Wrestling Rewind. I am your host, Angel Amoroso, and I am joined by my co-host, the Iron Man, Tommy Cairo.
Right here, Angel. How are you?
And this week we are here for another installment of Wrestling Archives. Now, Tommy, usually you take over the Wrestling Archives there, but this week I was reading over some articles and I ran into this one. And it actually was a huge focus on what we've been focusing on here on Wrestling Archives. And it's called the Unsung Heroes, the Journeymen of Professional Wrestling. So I'd like to get into that. And there's a long list of different guys' names. So, I want to get into reading that and just get your opinions on something, because this is all part of history. And all these guys were journeymen, a huge part of wrestling history, and people that you should be recognized more often. This is our whole point here in Wrestling Rewind, is to bring you back and to, expose that talent to you that maybe was underutilized or, just not shown enough, or they were used and maybe, became journeymen, as they call them, or jobbers, as some will call them. But anyway, so
I like to use not featured. So they were there.
Not top of the card, like B card, maybe. Right. I don't know. How would you describe the journeyman?
Yeah, but when I say we say lesser known, which really encapsulates what we want to say. But since that sounds a little bit negative, I like to stick in here lesser known, not featured, meaning they were there, they were good, but
they weren't guys who were going to be on the poster.
Right. Exactly.
So here we go with this. Let's add this. Oh, just changing the layout here so that I could actually read this. And this was actually an article from WWE.com Classics. And I'm just going to credit that right there.
Sure.
So that we don't run into any problems. So we've been focused on this topic. So I'm excited to hear their spin on it. So this is the Unsung Heroes, the Journeymen of Professional Wrestling. Now we got the Conquistadors there, and a whole lot.
Who knows who they were at any given time?
Right. Okay. WWE will always be known for its larger-than-life superstars. Muscular physiques, flashy ring attire, and cool catchphrases make them stand out in the mind of the WWE universe. However, back in the day, a small group of sports entertainers were notorious for different reasons, most notably their proclivity for being on the losing end. These journeymen didn't have bulging biceps. Their ring gear was most likely a drably colored pair of trunks with worn boots and a stained jacket. No high-energy rock music signaled their entrance. In fact, they didn't even have entrances. Though these combatants looked like they might be better suited as plumbers or electricians and had win-loss records to match, they still had the determination to step into the ring and ply their craft. They earned the silent respect of WWE Universe, who often knew the fate of these competitors before the bell rang. Now take a look back at some of the WWE classic photos here. There's Barry Horowitz. We won't spend too much time on that. So for Barry Horowitz, asking why do we recline on this night and not other nights was not just a question for the Passover Seder, as his shoulders were pinned to the canvas on most nights. A beloved member of the WWE roster for many years, the WWE Universe likely recalls the deprecating Horowitz patting himself on the back before matches, knowing full well the eventual unfortunate outcome. It only made sense for Barry to have that sense of humor. For him, it wasn't about the victories, but rather a dream come true of competing inside the squared circle, even battling back from a devastating neck injury. In 1995, Horowitz was involved in one of the most memorable moments in WWE history. On an episode of Superstars, the crowd became unglued when Horowitz upset Body Donna Skip, which was
Chris Candido.
Right, leaving Jim Ross to exclaim the result in a state of shock. Despite losing the majority of his matchups on that night, Horowitz was certainly the chosen one. So he beat Chris Candido on TV.
Yeah. And not only that, okay.
Did that precede the pat on the back? Because he definitely deserved one for that.
Yeah, his ring jacket had a hand print on the back. Now, I'll tell you something about Barry Horowitz. Well, maybe people don't know. He was the Florida heavyweight champion as Jack Hart. Now, I don't know what the time frame was. I assume if he was working for Vince at that point, he probably wasn't going down there. So it might have been prior or it might have been after. I'm not sure. More than likely prior. Yes. So if you want to look that up, Jack Hart, Florida heavyweight champion, he had no problem getting over as a top star. So, these guys often that would happen. Leave here, go to California, and be a big name. So
then we got Frank the Moose Monroe.
Yeah.
You heard of Frank the Moose?
Oh, yes, many years ago. Yep. I just remember Frank Monroe. He wasn't such a moose, I guess, when I saw him.
I guess not. But in the 1970s ring competition, few grapplers could match the imposing demeanor of the man straight from the thickets of Canada, Frank Moose Monroe. With his beard, immense silhouette, and woolly physique, it doesn't take a Lanny Paffo to discover where Monroe earned his Bullwinkle name. When it came time for WWE Superstar to earn his stripes in the days of disco, he was forced to tangle with the beastly gent from up north. Unfortunately, Monroe was more Bullwinkle than Mark Miser and was often on the losing end of his contests, like most of them. The Moose succumbed to the talents of several WWE Hall of Famers and legends, including Tony Atlas, Chief Jay Strongbow, High Chief Peter Maivia, Tito Santana, Ivan Putski, Bob Backlund, and Haystacks Calhoun, just to name a few. So Guy had a long career there in the 70s.
Yeah, and if you got to realize this, a guy that's that big and imposing, even if he's a kind of a jobber, for a little bit, you're wondering, I don't know, he's a big guy, anything can happen. So, and then also in beating a guy that imposing means a little bit more, has a little, wow, our guy, but top guy must really be something. Because, he handled this big guy with no problem. So
yeah, look at him.
Yeah, big guy.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
And then we have the Los Conquistadors, which we all love.
And I would venture to say different guys at different times.
All the time, right?
Yep.
So there's not a whole lot of information known about these golden-clad combatants. They seem to like it that way. WWE Hall of Fame ring announcer Howard Finkel introduced them as hailing from the ambiguous somewhere in Latin America, leaving WWEClassics.com chances of tracking them down somewhere between slim and none. The masked men competed in WWE rings throughout the 80s, mostly as cannon fodder for the dominant team of the era. Like Demolition and the Hart Foundation, the Conquistadors, however, did find some success appearing as part of a 10-man Survivor Series elimination match at the 1988 edition of the pay-per-view. They were one of the final 2 tag teams in the match, but ultimately couldn't handle the brute force of the powers of pain. The Conquistadors ventured back to their mysterious Latin America abode until they seemingly returned to action in 2000, defeating the Hardy Boys for the World Tag Team titles. It was soon revealed that Edge and Christian had donned the hoods to outsmart the champions, leaving the WWE Universe to wonder what happened to the original masked competitors, which like they could just keep using the Conquistadors and just anyone under those hoods and just like use them for signings, and, you know, like who knows who's under there. At one point, do we think that it was the Riveras? I think maybe
I've heard that, and sometimes you can see the shape of the face, maybe if it's somebody that has a particular, you know, look, walk, you know, but for the most part, they just switch those guys in and out like crazy.
Right, like Ding Dong 1 and 2.
Yeah, and think it is. If a famous masked guy, he has to wear his mask when he goes to an appearance. Because when he takes it off, nobody knows who he is.
Right. Okay,
I don't know.
Then we got the Duke of Dorchester, Pete Doherty. Ask any New York.
That should sound familiar to you.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that should sound familiar to you. I was just talking about it.
So ask any New York Yankee fans what they think the average Bostonian looks like, and they might paint you a picture of Pete Doherty. A slight, hefty frame, a long flowing mullet, and a toothless grin that only a mother could love made up the man known as the Duke of Dorchester. Named in honor of the Boston neighborhood he called home. I'm saying Doherty, is that right?
Yes, Pete Doherty, yep.
Doherty was a longtime WWE competitor, stepped into the squared circle throughout the 70s and 80s. The Massachusetts Madman approached the ring like a ball of fire, bouncing around and climbing all over opponents in the beginning of the matches. But once his foes caught on, it was curtains for Doherty. Repeat losses aside, the Duke of Dorchester was beloved in Beantown, drawing cheers from a cult following at venues like Boston Gardens. After stepping away from the ring, Doherty tried his hand at color commentary before retiring from sports entertainment. So I guess he was do too good there.
colorful character. You know, any fan.
If he was so colorful, I wonder what happened with the commentary. I wonder why he just couldn't, you know, keep it going.
I don't know. I didn't know that how long he did it, but I did catch a couple of the broadcasts, and he was perfect. You know, real character, real kind of wild guy. But the thing is, he could work with a broomstick, that guy. So, you know, and make it look good. So
yes. So what's the problem? Well, short-lived. He retired. I wonder why. You know, some things are unknown for a reason. Some things are unknown for a reason. Who knows?
Yes. I think he, by the looks of him, he looked like he always had a half a bag on, or, you know, was recovering from a couple nights out. So
maybe a lot of double shots, you know, one of those overused guys and underappreciated. And next we have Iron Mike Sharp.
Oh yeah, what a trip he is.
Yeah, working out with any furniture laying around in a room. Mike Sharp would just pick up a chair and start doing arm curls with it, lift the table over his head. Like working out to him was like so old school. It's like, you know, like the Flintstones working out. So Iron Mike Sharp, this competitor from the Great White North dubbed himself Canada's greatest athlete. At the start of his career, he may have been able to make an argument for that title. Sharp, who stood at over 6 feet tall and weighed close to 300 pounds, entered WWE in the early 1980s and immediately challenged the then WWE champion Bob Backlund for his title. Unfortunately, Iron Mike Sharp did not capture the championship and was never the same. He competed in WWE throughout the 80s and 90s in search of the victories that became more and more elusive as time passed. Sharp let out grunts throughout his contests in hopes of intimidating opponents and even wielding a leather arm brace, which may or may not have been loaded with a foreign object, all to no avail. Though his win-loss record was not the most impressive, Sharp is well remembered by a generation of fans, and a generation of fans who he also had a school for, who he worked a lot with in New Jersey. A lot of guys come out of Mike Sharp's school up in Jersey. You know, he took time with some people and, you know, really put his time in. So bravo to Mike Sharp.
Well, you know, also, because this is generated by the WWE, of course, there's a lot of missing information. And
of course.
What's missing is his career outside of WWE. So give me a minute. Let me see what I can do here real quick. You know, he had a long run in many, many places as a top star, not just, you know.
Mike Sharp, yeah.
Yeah, not just the feeder to the champion, but second generation also. Father and uncle were Mike and Ben Sharp. They also competed as a tag team. He went to school in Asbury Park. But if we see his career, you know, and you could do this on your own, you'll find out, you know, he was in Gene Kiniski's NWA All-Star Wrestling. He became a two-time NWA Canadian Tag Team Champions with Moose Morowski. Mid-South belts, also Tag Team Champion, Louisiana Champion 2 times, Mississippi title, along with the Brass Knuckles title in '79. Stampede in Calgary, where he held the Stampede International Tag Team Championship. So, you know,
wow.
There's a lot more. And most of the guys, again, not to be redundant, a lot of the guys you're going to see that are in this list elsewhere were bigger stars. And you didn't have all this media to find out what they were doing anywhere else. You know, they just went elsewhere. And if it was covered in the magazine, but nobody ever looked at it. I was probably one of the only little idiots, you know, figuring out, well, when Butcher Joe Noble leaves WWF and goes to California, he's the America's champion. When Johnny Rods, who's more or less a journeyman for WWF, goes to Los Angeles, he's Java Rook and he's the America's champion. Many, examples of that. So that's good to know, because if you like someone and you never quite saw him in the spot, the spot that you would like to have seen him in, you can go back and research this and find out that, he held titles. There's probably video, so it's a nice little investigative job,
It's all about what Wrestling Rewind is about. Do you go rewind and go back in history, learn a little something you didn't know. And then next up, we have Dwayne Gillberg. In January of 1999, the bullhorn sounded the sixth entrant, that's what it says, in the Royal Rumble match. And out from the entrance tunnel came the man they call Gillberg to a thunderous ovation, stumbling through a truly unimpressive pyrotechnics display. The relatively unknown caused Jared Lawler to sarcastically exclaim, "He could win this whole thing."
Oh my God.
Well, not quite. Gillberg leaned over the ropes, mugged for the camera, and was quickly disposed of. Par for the course for this goateed underdog. But Dwayne Gill wasn't always a cartoonish parody. In fact, Gill was a reliable grappler for many years, battling a who's who of WWE superstars throughout his career, including Goldust, Chris Jericho, The Undertaker, Mick Foley, Bob Holly, Sean Waltman, Billy Gunn, the Steiner brothers, and Shane McMahon. In fact, Gill even defeated Mark Mero in a match where Mero declared he would retire if he was unsuccessful. In 1998, Gill beat Christian to win the WWE Light Heavyweight Championship. I didn't know that. The victory would quickly go to his head as Gill morphed into a persona that resembled a certain former WCW champion, and perhaps it worked. Gillberg would go on to be the longest reigning light heavyweight champion of all time, holding the title for well over a year. And the man that will always be called Dwayne Gill might be more known for his goofy antics than his ring proficiency, but the crowd will always be chanting his name. Now, and I mean, he took that really for a ride through independence.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, back and forth. I mean, he was booked everywhere. You saw Dwayne Gill everywhere.
I had him on my shows at the, I think once at the Trop. The funny thing is, it's so cool. But what they did was, you know, of course, that is nothing but, you know, not even an inside joke, an inside-outside joke. You know, all of that was just to make fun of Goldberg. That's a long way to go.
Right.
Of another company.
Just for a joke.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of energy put into, you know, you must really have a bug up your butt, you know, if it bothers you that much that this guy got over. But it was funny about Gilbert, like, I guess Goldberg, whatever tattoo he has, but Gilbert, he had, it was little square, little rectangles.
Triangles?
Like
right.
With space in between, all the way around. I don't even know if it was real. I think it was painted on, you know. But yeah,
Great.
He started screaming down the hallway at me about his room or something, and I was like, "Chill out, bro." You know, I mean, lucky that you're getting a room. Where would he get in a room at that point? You know what I mean?
Right.
But
right.
listen, you know, dumber gimmicks have made, you know, been successful.
Oh, absolutely, and that wasn't the worst one. And
No.
probably, you know, it's humorous, and one of the more marketable gimmicks that they could do while they're being sarcastic and making fun of someone else. It was good. And he really, you know, he played it out great. And, you know, he took it places where probably a lot of other guys wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah,
you know?
Or they would have just, when they left Vince, they would have just dropped it, you know. But he was smart enough. Well, look at Ray Apollo. You know, when he goes in his clown outfit, because again, like a masked wrestler, if Ray Apollo was standing there dressed in street clothes, only a few of us would know him.
Yeah, you're not going to know who you're looking at.
So imagine you got to do that every time you go somewhere. You got to put that outfit on.
Right, exactly.
That's dedication.
Certainly does. I know all about putting outfits on here.
Yeah.
So next we have the Continental Nobleman.
Yes, my man.
So built from Catania, Sicily, Joe Turco was as odd as a slice of square pizza. The man that referred to himself as the Continental Nobleman removed his robe in front of WWE crowds over the course of several decades, which usually followed with a dismissive wave of his hand. Turco pulled his tights up high over his belly, twirled the sides of his mustache, and gave condescending smiles to WWE fans who knew full well that the Continental Nobleman would not be smiling in a matter of mere minutes. Despite rarely achieving victory, Turco was consistently distraught over the outcome of his matches. When opponents would attempt helping Turco from the canvas for a post-bout handshake, the Sicilian snob would brush them off in a fit of frustration. Hang in there, Joe. Maybe one of these days your matches will live up to your high Fulton moniker. Now, that's one of your favorites, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, like I was going to say before, I forgot that point, is there are certain guys that if you're a fan like us or a fan like me from that era, if I say the Continental Nobleman, you better know it's Joe Turco. If I say the Duke of Dorchester, you really should know that it's Pete Doherty. And again, these are the guys that tickle me to death. I mean, they're just such characters, and usually I wrote this, and I want to give it a quick read. It's real quick. What we're doing with this Wrestling Rewind is we're either in-depth interviews or stories or text about many lesser, non-featured talent responsible for building the foundation of pro wrestling by enhancing the performance of upper-tier talent, many of whom are superior to the ones they support, which is exactly the way I wanted to say it. The way I mean it is exactly that. You'll find that no matter what, in order to be successful at that spot, you have to be able to work well with anybody. And if you can't, then you won't have that spot, or maybe they'll push you up, because a lot of the upper tier guys weren't as great or as talented as some of the people that had to put them over. It's just a fact, you know.
And you're just as good as the person that you work with, and sometimes that's proven. And a lot of these guys that you like to call jobbers and everything, but if it wasn't for them, there wouldn't be the top card guys. Yeah. So give credit where credit is due. And next we have Frankie Williams. Frankie's career in the ring probably didn't pan out as he imagined it. Still, regardless of his woes inside the squared circle, the native of Columbus, Ohio, was still very proud of his job. Williams valiantly stood up for himself in a very heated edition of Piper's Pit when Rowdy Roddy Piper incidentally harangued him about his shortcomings. After asking Williams whether he lost a match or not, Piper launched into one of his trademark tirades, saying that doughy journeymen lacked the guts to succeed in WWE. Having enough of the rowdy one's verbal lashing, Williams made a bold move, grabbing the microphone from Piper's hands and declaring, "I'm not afraid of anyone, or else I wouldn't be in the ring." The Ohioans' bravery earned him a few right hands to the temple from Piper, who literally threw Williams out of the pit. So
poor Frankie Williams.
Poor Frankie. Yeah, and then moving on, we have Mario Mancini.
Yeah.
Here's a Mario who wasn't particularly super. Astute members of the WWE universe will remember Mancini, whose bushy mustache gave him a slight resemblance of the famous video game character he shared a name with. However, once the bell rang and his personalized satin jacket came off, Mancini probably wished he could warp to the Mushroom Kingdom, as he often found himself looking up at the lights when all was said and done. All kidding aside, Mancini was a capable competitor. He stood across the square circle from legendary names like the Macho Man Randy Savage, The Undertaker, and when both were starting out, and survived to tell the tale. In fact, Mancini acted as a gatekeeper of sorts to WWE for many superstars. The first real test of their careers, those who made it past him, WWE fans more than likely remember those who didn't. Well, let's not talk about them, and I guess we won't. So next we have the Brooklyn Brawler, as this is probably one of the most famous jobbers in the business, I would say.
Yeah, and I think famous for the fact that they gave him some wins, some notable wins every now and then, and he may have held the hardcore title, I think, possibly. I'm not sure.
Yes. A man with nearly 30-year career. Steve Lombardi has become one of the most beloved performers in the WWE's history, taking on roles as Kim Chi, Abe Knuckleball Schwartz, and even briefly under the masked makeup of Doink the Clown. Lombardi achieved his real notoriety as the cherished Brooklyn Brawler. As hard-nosed as a collision at home plate, the Brawler grappled his way through WWE in a torn New York Yankees shirt, a leather cap, and an All-American blue jeans. Despite having access to Bobby the Brain Heenan's managerial talents, the Brawler didn't win many matches, but that's what might have made this man from the county of Kings so special. But don't think his win-loss record damaged his reputation. You'd never want to run into the Brawler on Flatbush Avenue. He was as tough as they come, and a victory over the Brawler meant a superstar's name was forever etched in history. While he may not have been in many main events, the Brooklyn Brawler will never be remembered as one of them bums. So they don't consider him one of them bums. And we kind of closed out there with let me see. Hold on there for a second. Let me get that out of there. We closed out with the Brooklyn Brawler, and I think that there was probably so many more that we could have gotten into, talked about their history. They jobbed out so many people. You think they would have had a longer list. Maybe you could bring up some people to add to that list of.
Oh, I can think of quite a few people. You know what's funny? There's another level. There's a couple levels. But in the long run, they're all kind of jobbers or enhancement talent. It's just some people, they push it a little further. And, you know, when it comes to journeyman wrestlers, I don't think it only means the guys that are constantly putting somebody over. It's almost anybody under the top, you know, tier champions and just below. Maybe they're not really contenders. But there were guys years ago like Buddy Wolf. And I found out later on that a lot of the guys who I remember their names, turns out later on I'm reading history and they weren't considered, you know, like as big as they were in my mind. So I think it's all in the eye of the beholder too, because you can read between the lines sometimes and see somebody that has a lot of talent and they're just not giving them, you know, a decent push, or, you know, guys that are built to have everything but are still green, and, you know, you don't want to damage them. So you got to watch how you use them. You know, different federations, different groups would either WWF had a constant, you know, 15, 20 guys, Silvana Sousa, Juan Caruso, all these guys, you know, Bull Pametti, there's tons of them. And instead of like maybe filtering more different people through, they kept doing that to the same guys, which means they're pretty much pegged. They can't be used for anything. You can't bring them really up the card because it's not feasible in the people's minds. So I was thinking today of a couple people that would fit in the next tier up, maybe almost like a Brooklyn Brawler, would be like Chick Donovan.
Okay.
Golden Boy Chick Donovan. And then he had Fabulous Frank Monty. There were a lot of work. Their work was done in California, but they were more again like the Nature Boy type, pretty boy, blonde hair, that kind of thing.
Like Gary Young, the Italian Stallion.
Yeah, all those guys.
You know, like it just goes. And the Ding Dongs, actually, those guys have a long history of, you know, Randy and Bill Mulkey.
Right.
Just like did so many different gimmicks under mask. They did like the Russians. I think whenever like, you know, Russians had to have like a match, they got under the mask, and then they actually did Russians at one point, I believe, under masks and suits. So they were probably, I think, Jim Crockett's most overused jobbers. And you could tell it was them. It was the thing.
Yeah.
But no one seemed to mind. No one minded.
And if you've ever seen the most horrific bump I've ever seen, is one of the Mulkey brothers getting thrown out over the top rope and taking the bat bump right on the floor from inside the ring to out.
Oh, they took hellish bumps. Yeah. Hellish. So what I'm going to do right now is what I did. I Googled, since we're on the subject, I Googled the term wrestling jobbers. Okay. Now I'm going to share the screen with you to show you what comes up. So, and this is what's considered, this is from sources across the web, as you'll read, right? First in line, Barry Horowitz. Yep. There we go. He was truly an enigma with his ranks of the jobbers as a jobber. Okay, so.
It says about Florida right there?
Yes.
Lost as Jack Hart, then won the Florida Heavyweight Championship.
Okay. Yep. And then we got the Brooklyn Brawler.
S.D. Jones, yeah.
Well-known jobber in WWF, Brooklyn Brawler was a cult hero. He helped wrestlers get over and create a cult following of his own. All right, S.D. Jones, 15 of 19, he lost to King Kong Bundy in 8 seconds at the first WrestleMania event, and that may have been his claim to fame. And then you got Dwayne Gill. But before he reached comedy wrestling, Dwayne Gill was a big part of WWE's transitional new generation era. Okay. And then we got Mike Sharp again. Lake Jones would beat the lesser jobbers on a regular basis, always using his controversial rubber forearm band. And, Johnny Rodz.
Yeah.
Right. Not many job guys reach the WWE Hall of Fame, but in the case of Johnny Rodz, it's well deserved. You know, part trainer, part enhancement talent. You know, Johnny Rodz is a talented guy and got a lot of people trained and in the door and through the business. So in his time, you know, may have been considered a jobber, but you know, he the king of getting in, you know. And then we got the Gambler,
Who the heck
Jeff
was that?
Jeff Gamble is best known for his run as enhancement talent in World Championship Wrestling from 93 to 90.
Yeah, I remember.
I don't.
Yeah.
And I was around there. I don't remember that. Okay. This is a funny one.
Oh yeah.
Mick Foley.
Oh
wow. Didn't look like someone who could end up as one of the biggest stars in WWE. However, was started out as a jobber thanks to development of his character in WWE. So they consider Mick Foley a jobber.
Yeah, I mean, I saw old video of him on a WWF, broadcast when I don't even know if he used what name he was using then, but I do remember that. Yeah, long time ago.
Squash is USWA, and at first, his first entrance into NWA, Jim Crockett NWA. As a matter of fact, he was getting squashed by everyone. So and then we got George South, Georgia Championship Wrestling's greatest jobber. South was the victim for everyone. He got his ass beat by every champion there was, which was his big claim to fame. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Italian Stallion, Gary, was one of those guys who was more popular after he stopped wrestling. He toiled in WWF, WCW, and the NWA. And then we have Curt Henning, for some reason, is considered a jobber. Did you know that?
No. I mean,
yes, the former WWE Hall of Fame wrestler wasn't always so perfect in the squared circle. From 82 to 84, Henning worked as the opening matches on most AWA shows.
Wow.
So, jobber. Curt Henning. Who would have known? This is Google. Well, this is Google saying this.
Yeah, but the difference is, it started out, but he didn't stay.
Exactly. They say that. I'm not reading the whole article because who has all night to read all of it. And then we have Dusty Wolf. For some reason, they got his birthday there. I don't know why. He's best known for his run as enhancement talent in the World Wrestling Federation from 1987 to 1993. So, all right, enhancement talent. And then we got Rusty Brooks. Kurt Koski is best known for his run as enhancement talent in the World Wrestling Federation from 1984 to 1988.
I believe he just passed.
Oh, did he? Oh, it's a shame. Yeah. And then we have Mark Starr, who is one of the few jobbers on the list to have a pay-per-view experience on his resume, losing to the likes of Alex Wright and Sergeant Craig Pittman. And then we got Barry O. Poor Barry O.
Yeah.
Barry Orton is best known for his run as an enhancement talent in the WWF from 1985 to 1991, and otherwise known as the boy who got touched and spoke up and spoke out about the perverts in the WWE and the WWF back at the time who were diddling him and a lot of ring boys, and what happened to poor Barry Orton, right? Yeah. Poor Barry O.
It's terrible. I mean, there's that story. There's many, many more.
Million more. And next we have Lanny Paffo, who you may remember the Young Stallions when the WWE paired him alongside Jim Powers. I remember Rick Martel, but okay.
Yeah.
Another jobber that makes this list. Again, success was limited. Now, Lanny Paffo, I don't know if I agree with them on this one either, because even though he was a jobber, he had a gimmick.
Yeah.
And they had promos and they put him over enough. So I mean, maybe a top card jobber.
Yeah. Also, I believe it was Paul Roma and Jimmy Powers.
Exactly. Paul Roma. I'm sorry. I misspoke. I said
but maybe they made a mistake because I don't remember those two together.
Okay. And then we got Tiger Chung Lee, a former headliner in New Japan Pro Wrestling to open match jobbers in the WWF. Lee had a brief push in the tag team with Mr. Fuji.
Yeah, I don't remember him being a jobber at all.
No, neither do I. PJ Walker was a WWE enhancement talent, debuted in 1993 and did the job on a almost weekly basis for other wrestlers and helping to establish Stars. That is a what's his name there? PJ Walker. What's his name? Just Incredible.
Yeah, that
was the Portuguese man of war. Aldo Montoya, the Portuguese man of war, right? Okay, so that was his run. Yes.
Gimmick? Okay.
A Portuguese man of war, right? That was it. And then right after that, he started ECW.
Yes.
I actually brought him in a locker room, so but I won't get back into that. Then we have Paul Roma, who we mentioned. To think he was once a tag team partner of Arn Anderson. Tisk Roma as a good-looking, well-built dude who got his head butt beat. I don't know. So yeah, Paul Roma. I don't know. Is he still active? I don't know. Still hanging around?
No, I saw him doing some show. A lot of the stuff I don't necessarily agree with.
Again, this is from Google. We're reading from Google. So it's considered, you know, a lot of people put spiteful things in search engines and Wikipedias and whatever people read on there. And a lot of times it's wrong information where people are labeled wrong. But they are saying that, you know, they used to be. And then some of the talent then developed from more than just jobbers. Then we have Frankie Williams, is best known for his run in enhancement talent in the WWF from 1975 to 1985. Wow. I was born in 1975. This dude was working already.
I graduated in 76.
Oh, shoot. Wow. Then we got Jose Luis Rivera, which we all know. If I was doing the top 11, he'd be there. I don't know what it was about Jose, but I always liked watching him open the matches for everyone in the WWF. Everyone. And Jose's son, also Jose Luis Rivera Jr., you know, did his time. And, you know, they did
there for 10 years, you're making a paycheck.
Yeah, and they were great over in Puerto Rico. They did a lot for everyone. Next, we have Colt Cabana. I'm not sure why he's on this list either. He's kind of a younger dude. Has become successful due to his podcast, The Art of Wrestling, as the indie superstar has used it as a vehicle to promote himself, which is probably, I guess, why he's on this list. Not so much because he's a jobber, but because they want to exploit him in his podcast. So, all right, I'll accept that. And then we have Tim Horner. Began wrestling in the late 70s and bounced around the territories in the South, learning his trade. He later joined Jim Crockett Promotions, which was where I know him from. I thought Tim Horner and the Brad Armstrong combination as a tag team was great. A little jobberish, you know. So, I mean, a lot of times you knew that if Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner wrestled, friggin' the Italian Stallion and Gary Young or whatever, you know, you knew that they were going over. But then if you saw Tim Horner and Brad Armstrong and the Road Warriors were coming down the aisle, then you know what I mean? You knew like how people stood as different levels of jobbers, you know.
They had their spot.
Yeah, not really considering Tim Horner a jobber. And around since the 70s. I didn't know he was around that long. He always looked kind of youthful as far as I was concerned. Then we got Mario Mancini, as we mentioned earlier. He still wrestles occasionally and trains future pro wrestlers in Puerto Rico. Could you imagine still? Mario Mancini oh, wow. That's amazing. I did not know that. So
must have had some connection to Carlitos to get that gig, you know.
Yeah, and Carlito never going to stop doing appearances, and you know that whole family just got it made.
Well, he probably had a good connection with the father, Carlitos Colon, I would imagine, because he's old enough to. So he probably, you know, in their dealings, because the father, Carlos Colon, was I think he was pretty tight with the New York office. I think they were an affiliate or something at some point too. Shared talent, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, a lot of these journeymen or jobbers that they shared on this list, and again, this was from a WWE list and a random Google search that I just looked up randomly because about it.
think it's
not our opinions. It's Google opinion. But I think that they skipped a whole lot of people from different promotions that probably should have been in there. Like, there were a lot of original jobbers that, with a lot of original names. When promotions became spiteful, like ECW, for instance, they would, take their jobbers and name them after local promoters like Joel Hartgood, Dino Sendoff, and just had a whole bunch of different guys with different names to just dig at different. They didn't use Dennis Carluzzo. They never did a Dennis Carluzzo jobber, which I was shocked that they didn't, take advantage of that, since they were always at such odds with
they
Dennis.
did a bigger number on him anyway, though. So
right. And as far as independents, I just don't really know who would be considered jobbers on the independent circuits, or if there even was any. Everyone's just lucky to be on the show.
and not only that, that's jobbers back when we were out there, say up until almost 2000 and going back 10, 15 years. I can't really think of anybody. And not only that, nowadays everybody wants to win, so either the matches are very competitive or they're screw job finishes or whatever. So I don't see anybody being considered a jobber today.
The thing is, a lot of people, even of our time that we shared locker rooms with, you'll now see matches of them on YouTube all these decades later. And the title, within the title, it says stuff like WWE Jobbers. And I'm bringing this up because it kind of irritated me the other day. Gary Wolf, who's doing a podcast over there, shared some footage that someone shared with him off of YouTube. And it's like everything you look up under what the Pitbulls were there, it's like WWE Jobbers, the Pitbulls, and WWE Jobber Gary Wolf. Like, what the hell? Someone titled it that way. And I don't ever remember them being jobbers. But the thing is, a lot of people that we worked with in NWA New Jersey and the independents from this area where we are were really the guys who were on the dark matches and the opening matches for WWF, WWE back in the 90s. So, a lot of those people, I guess we'll have to wait a couple decades for the people that we know as jobbers to actually make the list, like people like Derek Domino and Chuck Williams and Mike Tarras and people like that were always on TV. Chuck Williams got his hair cut. Got his hair cut. He took every finishing move between him and Derek Domino, every finishing move in the 90s of every wrestling superstar. And I don't see Derek Domino or Chuck Williams on that list, but I should. So they maybe need to add to their material on Google.
Yeah. And, that's a wide term, a broad term too, because seems to be so many. Well, let's face it, we know it's changed throughout the years. So, the typical jobber, whether it's there is none on TV that I know of. There's guys that do a job, but that doesn't mean they're jobbers.
Right.
They're doing that 50-50 booking, so, can't really be jobbers. I remember Jake the Milkman Milliman. He was an AWA guy, and he had short hair, but he had his long little tail in the back. Short, stocky guy, and I never got tired of seeing him try to win. I knew what the business was, but I just appreciated his effort. And I think he was kind of like wherever last person we talked about who was what's his name, Duke of Dorchester, where where he's in his hometown, they go crazy for him. So even though they had to suffer at the hands of the bigger guys, the guys that were up on the card, at least once in a while they got in their area. They got a bunch of people to come for them. And it didn't matter what they were winning, and the fact that it's work. If you're getting a paycheck for 10 years,
right?
Your job
is to be a jobber. As long as you're getting paid, you got a job. Be proud of that job.
Even the way they wrote that was the guy. I'm sure he didn't intend on looking up at the lights every night. It's not him. It's not up to him.
I just found another list that I quickly want to go over because I think it's funny that we're talking about when you look things up, Wiki and Wikipedia and everything.
Right.
And I just wanted to see what their definition of jobber would be because it's so funny what newer wrestling fans think that these terms mean. So
Right.
I'm going to just go to it here for a second. And I looked it up. I was real specific here.
Wow.
Category, professional wrestling jobbers. And there's 107 pages, which we won't go through all of. But it starts at Angel Acevedo, Diafi, Phil Apollo, Omar Atlas, Chuck Austin, Jerry Balasag, Batten Twins, Mikey Batts, Mike Bell, Salvatore Bellomo, Bobby Blaze, the Blue Meanie, Brady Boone, Mike Boyette. Oh, Mike Boyette. Mike Boyette was the best, man. I look forward to Mike Boyette all the time.
Oh, yeah.
He was my favorite jobber. Bob Brady, Rusty Brooks, Brickhouse Brown, Denny Brown, Dwayne Bruce, Bullpain. Yeah, I remember Bullpain, actually. But he became a gimmick later. He did good. Scott Casey, Pork Chop Cash, Jesus Castillo Jr., Los Conquistadors. They got them on every list. Ian Couture?
I don't know who that is.
I don't know how to pronounce that. Dangerous Danny Davis, Mike Davis, Colin Delaney, Dominic Danucci, Chris Duffy, the Duke of Dorchester, Veruca Eigen, James Ellsworth, Jose Estrada Sr. I'm surprised they just didn't put Junior in there as well. Anna Flash, Shoshai Funaki, Jimmy Jack Funk, Brian Gamble, the Gambler, Tony Gurria, Gilberg, Joe Gomez, Rene Goulet, Luke Graham, El Gran Luchador, Dr. Hannibal, Swede Hansen, Barry Hardy, Hardbody Harrison, Tim Horner, Barry Horowitz, Kentaro Hoshino, Sam Houston, the Italian Stallion, the Job Squad, Kenny J, SD Jones, Mike Corey, Kim Duck, Kenjo Kimura, Rocky King, Nick Kinski, Roger Kirby, Killer Kyle, Tommy Lane, Vito Lagrasso, Steve Lombardi, Joey Maggs, Mario Mancini, Frenchie Martin, Scott McGee, Mike Miller, Jake Milliman, Moondog Rex, Moondog Spot, Barry Orton, Outback Jack. Which one?
Cousin Luke, Gene Pettit.
Gene Pettit, Lanny Paffo, Jim Powers, Buck Quartermain, the Renegade, Reno Riggins, Jose Luis Rivera, Rip Rogers, Hari Sato, Mike Sharp, George South, Louis Piccoli, Dennis Stamp, Steve Stan Lee, Bobby Starr, who will be having on soon, Jim Steele, Tom Thorne, Chase Tatum, Survival Tobita, never heard of that one, Paul Vachon, Dale Vesey, Bobby Walker, George Wells, Pez Watley, Dusty Wolf, the Young Stallions, Mark Young, and Buck Zumoff. And that is Wikipedia's wrap-up of who
I see what they did.
Yeah.
This is not taking into consideration any high marks in their career. This is just at one time, those guys were jobbers.
Yeah, they were on the list and they were like, these are the guys. These are the guys who make the big guys look big.
But a lot of them did go on to have decent careers. Pistol Pez Watley, even Buck Zumhoff, he was a junior heavyweight champion for the AWA. Another criminal.
Right.
So I think that's what they're basically saying, that, at some point, I think because Tony Gurria, they have him down, but he was a tag team champion with Haystacks Calhoun. So
right.
I think it's probably accurate. It's just that, they're not saying that not all of them stayed jobbers, and a lot of them did have a decent career after that. Most of those guys were, big names that went after the champions, even like Paul Bashan, all those guys. Did they say Crazy Luke Graham?
I don't think Luke Graham was in there. No, no, oddly not. But
yeah,
that's pretty much covering the rewind of the jobbers or journeymen, or however you like to refer to them as, and they're all the people that really laid the ground for this business. So whatever you like to call them, thank God for them. Yes. If it wasn't for them, there would be none of you. So remember that as you're trying to claw your way to the top, those ones that are on the bottom are the ones that are helping you up.
Exactly.
So be appreciative of them. So I thought this was a lot of fun, actually, just to take a rewind on the journeymen in wrestling and really focus on the people that maybe we're going to be talking to in upcoming interviews and whatnot. Yep. So you get to look forward to that. And I've enjoyed this episode, and I hope you have as well, Tommy. And I hope everyone joining us.
Yes, anytime we're talking about the past when wrestling was wrestling, I'm in.
I hope everyone has enjoyed this episode of Wrestling Rewind, Wrestling Archives, and hope that you'll join us back for another episode here on the YouTube for Monty and the Pharaoh, where we're going to be on every Sunday night at 7:00 for Wrestling Rewind. So catch us back here next week for my co-host, the Iron Man, Tommy Cairo. I am the Virgin Princess Angel, saying have a nice night and a nice life.